All right, welcome everybody to a new wonderful episode of the Pivot Point at HQ. And today I am accompanied by Valentin Kuznetcov. A little bit about Valentin because I'm really excited he's here. Valentin started in finance, helped scale a Shopify brand to 10 million, then moved into private equity, investing in DTC, before actually becoming a growth advisor for DTC founders himself. And these days, he's obsessed with how operators actually make decisions. And he's building the new next business intelligence system for DTC brands, powered by AI, of course. Valentin, welcome to today's episode. I love that you're here.
Vincent, pleasure to be here, as always.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I love your journey, man. You started all the way from finance into e-commerce, and now you're actually also, you're developing the software. But we also had a chat earlier where you're also looking about the, let's say, the behavioral traits behind the founders and what actually limits them. So I think we're going to divide today's call a little bit in two sections, and we're going to start off with a beautiful question that you can answer as no one else. What do you see is currently the biggest myth about DTC growth that you keep having to debunk with the actual numbers?
It's a good question. I would say the biggest myth is that you can use attribution modeling to get your way out of a strategic problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. Because how I approach this, there's two levels of decision making. One is the strategic level, which dictates what is our next best priority in business, where we need to allocate our limited capital. And then the second layer underneath that is the tactical layer, which is how do we actually execute it, right? Where Triple Whale comes in is at the tactical level. Triple Whale serves to help you understand as one of the potential perspectives, not as the only source of truth, where you should be allocating your budget across your marketing channels in the best and most optimal way possible. Now, whether it fails or accomplishes the goal is up for debate, and the more channels you have, the more complex it becomes. But it doesn't really help you address the strategic question. What is the next step that we should make, right, in general? Because if you tell me, look, Val, we've stagnated for the past few months, 6 months, let's say, and we don't know what to do. You can go to Triple Whale to get a response, to get an answer for what you should do next. But you have a lot of options. For example, you could launch a new product, you could expand into a new geography, you could, invest in retention while you figure out the acquisition side. You can build a new funnel, you can add another marketing channel. There are so many things that you can do, and Triple Whale can only answer how you can allocate the budget across those marketing channels. And I think when brands approach, and I have this conversation every single day, like, should we use Triple Whale? Should we use Northbeam? You could, but you can't use it to answer global strategic questions for which you need expertise, for which you need experience, for which you need guidance. And that's where a lot of top experts really serve the niche. Because if you understand that there's strategy, and strategy comes first, and then tactics, you will succeed. But if you start with tactics and you start executing, you will be the busy idiot, right? Who optimizes everything with no purpose and wastes all the resources.
I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because if I look also at the brands that I'm serving, we typically come in with from a business health perspective first, but they are actually at a level where they're like, no, Triple Whale or Northbeam, that's our source of truth. This is where we're looking at. And I'm like, but it's directional, it's model, right? It's not even true. So how do you truly define? I think this is exactly the perfect fit where you guys come in with, like, okay, the CFO type of angle of how you want to frame that. Like, okay, but it seems like the two worlds have now officially merged, where formerly with tracking you could get away with, like, the platform tracking would do it all for you, and now it's more like, you gotta, it evolves so quick, you have to become half of a complete business consultant, really. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. And another thing as well, you got to remember that there's so much complexity within Triple Whale too. There's different attribution models, last touch, first touch, fraction. There's so many different ways to look at it. You don't fully understand how it works. You can't really understand the output and why it makes sense. Plus, there is complexity in platform. You could be targeting different customer types, like again, existing customers, prospects, remarketing, retargeting, prospecting. Then there is geographies. You could be targeting Canada and US at the same time. How do you know if one is more profitable than the other? And the simplest tools like unit economics by country is already much better approach to this than just looking at triple whale. Because triple whale will lead you down the flawed path. Whereas unit economics by country, by channel, by customer type will give you a much better understanding how much profit you get, what your benchmark should be, whether you can push more aggressively. And then it comes back to your art, which is how do you actually set up the account in a way that allows for that? Right?
Yeah.
Should we split by country? Should we only do US here, Canada here? Should we do prospecting versus retargeting versus remarketing, so that we understand the implications of in-platform performance on the back-end unit economics. And that's what we align both sides, and we can make better financial and strategic decisions.
Yeah, so basically, the source of truth is very clear, and you benchmark everything against that source of truth. If you when a founder or brand owner comes to you, and they're convinced that their business is healthy, right? What's the number one, or what's the number that usually proves them wrong? What are you looking at first thing?
I always look at the LTCM to NCAC ratio first. This is like my North Star, the first metric that starts it all. And then I can kind of branch out and understand where the problem lies. And again, for each category of products, you'll have different benchmarks. But the typical rule of thumb is, are we losing money at acquisition with variable costs in mind relative to our acquisition costs, or are we profitable? Because that will dictate how I will continue my conversation with them. Because if they're profitable and very much profitable, why are we not scaling, right? But if we're losing money, does LTV to margins allow for continuous losses? Because then, and a lot of brands are losing money at acquisition right now. What you have to remember is my typical recommendation is a 90-day payback on NCAC with LTCM, which is lifetime contribution margin, not revenue, not lifetime revenue. Very important. So you need to price variable costs into it to get to the profit that each customer brings in the first purchase. And then you see if that outweighs the NCAC. And if it doesn't, do you get that payback within 90 days? And if you don't, that puts tremendous pressure on the back end cash flow of the business. And then you have to finance it somehow. And what I typically say, there is 3 sources of financing in the business. New customers, that's your desirable source of financing. The second one is repeat customers. That's your fallback source of financing. And if you don't have new customers or repeat customers financing the business, then the only one is credit. Right? You borrow money or you raise money from investors, but that's a different conversation. Not a lot of brands do that. So you borrow money from Wayflower, Shopify. And all you're doing is really extending a runway for some time. And then what happens is a lot of brands don't fix their unit economics, don't fix their profitability and LTCM relative to NCAC. And then they have to refinance or borrow again. And that just diminishes their working capital. And slowly, over time, they just get into a distressed position.
I was wondering, right? So I've worked all over the spectrum. I've worked with small brands. I've worked with 7, 8, even up to 9-figure brands. And from a media buying perspective, sometimes you just see them making the same mistakes at every level that you're like, at this level, you think this is not happening, but it's still happening. How is it for you? Have you had a whole spectrum? If you look at the spectrum of different, smaller brands, starting brands versus further along the way, what are typically the same issues that they're having from your lens, or is there truly a massive difference?
I would say it's the same problems packaged up differently. Right? It's kind of like cyclical in a way. And you and I talk about psychology and self-help and spirituality and growth. And you know that as you start, growing as a person, you will also go through these cycles, but it's always different, right?
Yeah.
So brands might rely on one platform, at the beginning of their journey, but then as they grow and as they get more revenue coming in, they might rely on a different thing, but not the same thing that they relied on in the past. Like, for example, maybe you start within platform metrics only when you're a sub $3 million brand. Then you kind of learn and understand, well, in platform is actually misleading. So maybe we should switch to this source of truth. And maybe you choose triple whale, and that can get you to 5 million. And then once you get to Triple Whale, you realize, well, Triple Whale is not the right platform. So you kind of get to another platform. Then you build your own custom, data analytics system. And then you get to 10 million. And then you realize, well, our system is built flawedly because we don't take this into account. Benchmarking is flawed.
Yeah.
So you learn more things, and then you add those things. And as you continue adding, you might be growing. But then you're also consistently running into the same issues of, the system that we're falling back to is no longer viable, and we need to adopt a new system, right? So I think it's very repetitive. It's just different things. But if you run into the same issue over and over again, let's say you realize in platform doesn't work, but then you kind of try to expand into something else and it fails, and you go back to in platform, you get stuck, right? You get stuck at the same level, and you can't grow out of it.
That makes sense. Yeah, I see it as well. Like I've always said this thing for like sequencing, right? So some things make sense at an 8-figure range, but they don't make sense at a 6-figure range. Like some e-commerce accelerators that I'm involved in, they preach the whole start with Meta. Well, some of them were, start with Meta makes sense, but for some of them, there was already so much demand, you could start with Google. And so where does it make sense to add what channel from my lens? There's a lot of fluff about YouTube ads as well. Like, where does that fit in? Something like, YouTube ads crusty, because you're using it for brand awareness and because you have a side pocket of money that you can just invest for just impressions alone. So I love that you're saying is like, each level has its own challenges, and you can, break out of it by innovating and figuring out what is actually needed for that next level. That makes total sense.
Yeah,
and what I'm also
go ahead. Sorry, Vincent. And I think the only thing that matters is having an open mind and continuous learning mindset. Right? You will always find a better system, always, as you grow. And there's a saying, right? You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So you consistently have to level up the system that you rely on to make decisions. If you don't, then you will always be stuck and you will fall much further down, because it's easy to ride the wave when e-commerce is booming. But it's hard when e-commerce is not booming and you have to navigate the complexity. And the system will allow you to either prosper or fail, ultimately, in the long run, right? Of course, you can survive in the short term, refinance, get money from somewhere. But in the long run, it's the systems that get you to the position you want to be.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes total sense. And if you had to name the single biggest reason a brand that looks profitable actually is not, like what would that be? Because most of what I figured out is most of these brand owners, they either don't know fully their numbers themselves, because if I ask them, okay, I need these unit economics, they often don't fully accurately know these numbers themselves. But for some reason, they think like we're very profitable. So what is it in your take? The biggest reason that event looks profitable, but it might not be.
Let's start the conversation from LinkedIn. I see a lot of posts from pretty big names in the game sharing their ROAS only, never touching on the back-end numbers. And again, this is an overused topic, so I don't want to spend too much time. But as you know, ROAS doesn't tell you jack S.
Yep.
It doesn't. Now, another thing as well is it's not enough to know your profit contribution. Because you can tell me your profit contribution dollars are amazing. We're making $1 million in profit contribution post advertising. That's great. But what is your OPEX? Like, what is your load on the business, right? Because if it's 1.1 million, then you're losing money. And it doesn't matter how good your marketing efforts are. And ultimately, the business economics is all about the holistic look. It's not just marketing in isolation or ops in isolation or finance in isolation. So what I want to see brands talk about more is net profit. How much are they making after everything? What I typically say is OPEX is a reflection of managerial decisions. And that's why this is such a touchy topic for everyone, because it's direct input that a lot of founders control. Who to hire, what SaaS to use, how to manage their financing and legal aspects. All of these costs will go into your OPEX category, right? And founders are the ones that make the final decision about them. They sign the checks as well. Whereas advertising, you could say, well, our profit contribution sucks because the agency is wrong, right? Let's blame them for it. So it's always easy to shift responsibility and say, yes, our ROAS is not good, our marketing efficiency is not good. Supply chain sucks, well, because, COVID and everything. But OPEX is a direct control of managerial decisions, reflection of managerial decisions. If you overhire, if you get the wrong SaaS that costs you thousands of dollars and you're locked in the contract, if you hire a legal team that will milk money from you because of the decision that you made, right? All of this is just operator mistakes that will cost the business. And that's why founders and operators are hesitant to share that, because it's like exposing yourself and being vulnerable in terms of finances and decisions that you make. So what I'd love to see founders talk about more is the OPEX side, because that's the easiest way to free up cash in the business. It's a one-to-one conversion. Every dollar saved in OPEX is $1 in profit gained, which goes into your cash flow. Amazing conversion. You don't get the same conversion with marketing. You don't get the same conversion with supply chain. OPEX is one-to-one. So this is the highest leverage, but it's very hard for businesses because they're used to one way of doing things. And then founders grow into the system and they continue managing that system. And then it's hard for them to disassociate themselves from that system. So they continue making mistakes and don't want to share too much about it. So I would say this is the one thing that tells me everything I need to know about the business: net profitability. To go back to your question. And what I'd love to see more founders talk about is OPEX, how they manage their business, how they build it.
Because it seems like it's also a bit of an ego thing, right? Where it's showing the dollars, it's showing either the ROAS or then the contribution margin. But then I've seen clients indeed having a massive OPEX, which just takes this whole thing out of, like, it immediately see like, okay, it's not as healthy as we thought it was, the OPEX now. And then they're like, if you start to dig into the OPEX, it gets sometimes a little sensitive, because that's not always what they want you to be digging out. But if you truly want to help them, it's like dissect it and say, okay, what are we actually doing here? So if you're saying, the difference of what we just talked about, profitability, when it's actually there, but like in a true another lens, it is not. Like, what separates the brands that scale sustainably from the ones that, scale straight into a wall, if for lack of a better term?
Touched on it indirectly, but just to recap, the first one is the level of your systems. Right? If you continuously go back to the wrong systems to make decisions, you will not scale. Easy as that. So you constantly have to level up and understand what is that system that will get us to 20 million, 50 million. The second one is, how do you finance your business? If you're profitable acquisition, you're using new customers to finance new customers. So that naturally will allow you to grow smoothly and continuously. If you have strong repeat customer base that finances the business, that's great as well. At least you compensate for the losses of acquisition. Repeat customers come in, cover that up, and give you more on top, but you can grow. And if you don't, then you need to, rely on external financing to grow. And I would also add the third thing, which is, I would say the mindset is very important. The mindset, and the mindset for the whole organization as a whole, not just operators and founders, but of course it always streams downstreams from the top.
Yeah.
The founder himself or herself need to be in a position to incentivize good behavior that actually leads you to growth. Because if you're constantly constrained and constricted and you disallow any sort of experimentation and trying, right? I'm not saying this is all psychological, it's also rational. Come up with systems that allow you for experimentation and then feel comfortable about experimenting. Whether it's 20% of your budget going towards experimentation, whatever your risk or threshold of risk is, always do experimentation. Always allow for your talent to show talent, right? That's the most important, because you want the best people to come work for you, but then you prohibit any creativity and prohibit any sort of growth-led mindset and any attempts to grow and risk, because growth takes risks and it's part of the game. And you will fail, but you will also succeed. And when you succeed, it's going to be a boom, right? So launching new products, right? Come to it from this curiosity side. Don't block everything that comes on your table. Any ideas that are thrown, right? Every idea is worth exploring. If you has any legs. So just having the right mindset and knowing that you don't have all the answers, that you only know 1% of the business, 99% is where you grow. Right? So coming into this, I don't know anything. My ego needs to be aside for the important meetings. Just listen and take as much as possible input, and then listen to your gut, because your gut will tell you. Ultimately, you're the main decision maker. It will tell you what to do, right? Whether to listen, whether to try, whether to experiment. But I think that's the most important for any business to grow.
Yeah, I love it. We're getting into the direction where we can probably very much free flow, which is the unconventional stuff about behaviors and gut feelings and whatnot. Because although we think we have a lot of control, a lot of it is just like we only control our reaction. So, but before we dive in there, I have a bit of a bridge question to that, which is, have you seen a piece of, I would say, maybe conventional wisdom in the D2C space or in e-commerce in general that you think is actively dangerous for brand owners to believe?
Oh yeah. Well, now it's the most current one, which is AI will replace everyone. Ooh, don't get me started on that. I mean, it's such a, well, first of all, it's flawed thinking. I mean, if you replace every human in the world with AI, who are you going to sell to?
True. Yeah.
Right. No one has income, or maybe base income. What are you building? Like, what is the world you're building? You're building a site. I mean, how much do you have to hate humanity to want to replace every human in the world? It's just like the place it comes from, the whole mindset of like, let's replace everyone instead of empower and make it better.
Yeah.
That's a better message to spread. Like, I'm not saying don't use AI. I'm saying don't seek a way to replace a human. Right? Find the right human and then give them the tool to make them even more powerful. It's like, that's the win-win. It's like you're building a creative world where humans prosper and robots are being used. That's the most prosperous look. But I think it's also flawed in a way of going back to that idea of you only know 1%, you don't know the 99%. AI will typically give you enough to feel you satisfied, but not enough to push the boundaries. Right?
True.
What I mean by that is, it's like a first-year university student going to a PhD student and saying, I know everything. It's like, well, PhD student is an expert in the field. He's got years of experience and written papers and like done the research. And then the first-year student, no, none of this matters. We got the answer. It's like, well, okay. So it's like convincing that, yeah, we got first-year student to give us all the answers that PhDs know. Probably not going to work, guys. So again, I'm not saying AI will replace mediocrity, for sure. Like, anyone who presents themselves as an expert will go out the window easily. But anyone who's a real expert, who has been in the game for years, like you've been, like you're an expert in Google Ads. No one will take that away from you. No, you know. And I've had this happen with my previous client. They would run this cron job of AI every week of coming up with like ideas for Google Ads optimization, and then they would take those Google Ads optimizations, come to the Google Ads expert, and they would just throw it at them. Why don't you do it this way? It's like, guys, it doesn't work this way. Like, please listen to me. Please listen. It's like AI can come up with anything theoretically, but in practice, it doesn't work out this way. So.
And there's a lot of flaws in the AI. I even read a case on Reddit. I'm not sure if it was rooted in truth, but somebody at the top of the chain was using AI. They only figured it out 2 months later that it was flawed from the beginning, and they made all the decisions based on the flaw. You're like, this was then a major company that is like, the damage is like, and with our work, you notice like the devil's in the details. With finance, with media, but it's always the same thing. So yeah. And
it's very, very contextual, right? It's like sometimes gut feeling wins. Sometimes gut feeling beats data, and you can't explain why. It just works, right? Exactly. And AI doesn't have that feeling. What it also doesn't have is efficiencies of scale, as it turns out, right? And whatever bill you're paying right now will probably double, triple, if not quadruple in the next year or so, simply because AI is about to pop, and they have to cut the losses. And someone needs to finance that, and it's the users that will finance that. So they will increase the cost. But there's not enough users in the world using AI at the moment, it's less than 1% of people in the world using AI. So
How many?
less than 1% of people.
Really? Oh man, it feels like 50% is doing it.
No,
But that's the bubble that
you're in
we're
the bubble.
in.
You're in the bubble, right?
Yeah.
So it's less than 1%, and only 0.1% of people are paying customers, paying users, even less than that, right? So the question is, it's like charging tax to 0.1% to run the whole government.
Yeah, doesn't work.
Right? It's not going to work. You need a base of people using AI. So there's no economies of scale in the short term. It will work out in the long term when enough users join and they can spread the cost. But at the moment, we're going through very interesting times. So if you bet the whole business on AI to do all of your operations in the next 1 or 3 years, you might run into a wall of this cannot be scaled, or this is now inefficient, or we're not getting answers that we should be getting. That's why I'm not worried about the whole rush of like AI. I'm not worried at all. Build sustainable business, built for the long term. It will always even out.
Add value. Yeah, I agree. That's beautiful. Yeah, I did not know that I knew I was in a bubble, but I did not know it was that small of a bubble that I'm in. Like I was thinking like majority of people is using it already.
Small. I mean, e-commerce is such a small space too.
It's true. Yeah.
How many active people? Like maybe less than 10,000 active people on LinkedIn talking about e-commerce, and then you probably like 10x that of people who are on LinkedIn doing e-commerce, like 100,000 people, maybe 1 million people max. It's such a small space.
If you look at the ratio inside of this e-commerce, then it will be much higher. But that's marketing tactics. That people, if there's any space that creates FOMO that is sensible for FOMO, it's the marketing space, because they're all about shiny objects. Let's go.
beat your competition. Rush to market.
Rush to market. Yeah, fast. Speed is everything. Let's create so much disturbance. Yeah, for ourselves mostly. Okay, that makes total sense. And I agree with you. I don't think it's going to take everything over. I see really nice use case of you being faster, more productive. If you're smart people, they can elevate, their brain by 10. And that's the good part. But I don't see it replacing anytime soon. And they're talking about this super intel, super A, whatever it was, that should be autonomous. But I'm always thinking like the first human being, if you want to be creative and AI is just copying stuff, where is the creativity? Everybody would just create more, copycats of copycats, which if we learned anything from the earlier days where we burned CDs, just get lesser quality, right?
Exactly. But the only thing you can't replicate or print with AI is authenticity. Every human is authentic, and you just need to find yourself, find your voice, find how you think, and that's kind of like that's what escaping the matrix, escaping the system really means, right? It's like who are you really, right? And it's some people fear it because it's hard to face your realness, who you are, but that's where money is, because no one can replicate it.
Let's dig a bit into that, because I love that you mentioned the authenticity. I think that's a very interesting part. Like, what made you look, because you went all the way from finance to e-commerce, like marketing, and now you're more on the, let's call it self-development, exploring / spirituality path-ish. What made you jump in that direction? Why the interest?
I'll tell this story. I've sat in meetings with big players in the game. And one thing that always stood out to me as an early sign was everyone can look at the same dashboard and it never made sense to me. You can sit down and rationalize the whole presentation, the whole report for 1 hour to smart people, and they still take away different things from it. That's when the seed was planted. I realized that, okay, rationalization definitely doesn't work. No matter how much you rationalize things. And I'm a pretty good rationalizer myself. Like, I know my things and I can rationalize them into simple language, simple understanding of it. But it never works with people when I'm in the room. and they understand it, but they still arrive at different levels. So I started digging deeper into this, and what I've observed is 3 levels. The first level is methodology, the methodology for interpretation. That's important, and this is pure rationalization. It's like if you look at the data, but you don't really know what it means, then everyone can conclude different things. So the first thing is establishing methodology. For example, refund rates. Okay. If we look at a refund rate and it's 15%, what does it mean to you, Vince? Is it good or bad?
15%? I think it's high.
Right, but what if the industry standard is 30%? Is it good or bad?
And it's good.
So there's a methodology in place, right? Now you have benchmarking that kind of drives or navigates the conversation, because to everyone with different experiences, 15% can mean good or bad. But when the methodology is in place, we can rationalize against that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we've established the methodology. Now the next problem is assignment of accountability. Also somewhat psychological, somewhat rationalizing. So rationalization is still part of it, but it's also a bit of psychology. What that means is, let's go back to that 15%. And I tell you, you run marketing. There's an ops guy present in the room right now. Who should we assign this refund to? Is it a function of marketing efforts, or is it a function of operations?
I would go with operations.
Right. But the thing is, what if we push the wrong product in our campaigns, right? And we're pushing it aggressively, so the refund rate starts growing. Right, so we didn't catch the fact that we're continuously pushing a product in marketing that it's not a good seller but has an extremely high refund, pushing our average higher.
Yeah.
Now it becomes a marketing and ops problem. But the thing is, everyone is so obsessed with keeping their toilet clean that they forget that there is a larger problem, which is the refund rate hits the P&L of the whole business.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter like how you twist it. It doesn't matter if it's a marketing problem or ops problem, right? So everyone has to come together and say, well, the refund rate is a shared responsibility. How we fraction it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because we still swallow that 15% together. So let's figure out a way where we maybe reallocate our budgets in the short term, and we also fix the supply chain issue, because maybe it's a combination of both most of the time. But if the egos clash and everyone is trying to save their metrics, you will not get anything. Now, let's say that we got everyone on the same page and everyone is happy. The last thing is psychology. Now, that's where the tough part begins, because psychology is, you can have a methodology in place, you can have the right assignment of responsibility and assignment of accountability in place, but then still people leave the conversation with different mindset and different ideas, right? One can think, we need to pause ads altogether. The other one thinks that we need to launch a new product. The supply chain person will think, well, now I need to restructure the whole supply chain, because everyone has a different mindset and they will see the conversation through their own lens. And they will see the conversation as it was, but they will perceive it as what they heard.
Exactly.
Right? And then the whole shitstorm begins, where the founder or the operator has to make a decision, but then everyone is all over the place after the meeting, even though everyone was on the same page during the meeting, because they went ahead and they left the energetic space of the meeting and they submerged into their own realities. And everyone now goes back to that meeting, tries to remember it, and then they just imagine different things now. It's like the memories cannot be recreated. You have to forge them from scratch again. It's like, what did we talk about? Oh, right, supply chain issue. Now I need to go back and maybe restructure. And it's like, that's not what we talked about. We talked about this. Yes, you can rationalize, you can send meeting notes afterwards, but it's still open to interpretation through the psychological lens of the individual.
I love that, because one thing I learned is that you see life how you are, right? Your personality creates your reality, really, because how you think, act, and feel, that's the lens through which you perceive the world. Like, you and I can walk on the opposite sides of a road, and in the middle there's a dog, and I see the dog and I'm like, oh, cute dog. I had dogs in my young years, nice dog, big dog, but I'm looking forward to it. While you maybe in your childhood had like a bite from a dog, so it's traumatized, like, oh shit, a dog. Same, objectively, there's only a dog on the street, But from our personal perspective, like big dog, scary dog, well, I'll say, oh, it's just sweet dog, right? That's just where it happens. And things get so lost in translation due to, well, however your life has come about, right? That's just where it all lands. And I think that's interesting, as you mentioned, like people in the room, you can talk about the same thing, but based on the history, whatever is in your system, you just filter it differently.
Example is the best one because everyone has different feelings about dogs, right?
Yeah.
It's like, why? Right? Why do one person hate dogs? Why does another person love dogs? One person fear dogs, right? It's like there's different feelings about dogs and how we perceive them, but in reality, it's just a dog.
Exactly. And it's just objectively, it's a dog. That's what I love about, let's just go in different direction as well. Like the whole thing with social media nowadays, it's a lot of divide and conquer, a lot of pushing narratives and stuff. But in reality, it's like, okay, somebody saw something happen. I wasn't there. But you would do like a police report. Okay, at 8:05, this and this occurred, this and this happened according to this person. I wasn't there, but they said this happened. That would be such more beautiful objective. No emotions, right? This is very rational, but that would be an objective way of describing an event. And seemingly now everything again is filtered through a certain emotion I'm feeling or a lens that I'm looking through, and through social media we get in 100 different directions, firing at your nervous system. No wonder everybody gets a little delulu over time.
Absolutely. And if you go back to the business context and you think about it, everyone sits down at the meeting and you come up with this brilliant idea that makes sense in your head, and then you just throw it out there on the table and everyone disregards it. And then you feel personally offended and you feel like you're not appreciated or listened to. But the fact of the matter is, maybe it's not a priority at the moment. People just brushed it off real quick, but it doesn't mean that they don't value you.
Yeah.
They value you. It doesn't mean that they don't value you, but we take that as offense and they're like, well, they don't listen to me, they don't hear me. And we start this whole cycle of, oh my God, like I'm not appreciated, I should consider. And that creates culture as well. Then it starts the whole thing of, I shouldn't participate in meetings because I'm not listened to anyways, right? And then that demoralizes everyone around you. And then you start detaching from the company. And then the founder senses that. And then that slows down decision making. When in reality, it was just one thing that happened. But it planted a seed of this lack of confidence and lack of, I guess, like worth or self-worth in you as an expert. And then it just snowballs into something. But then you got to ask yourself, at what point did my parents not pay attention to me, right? And then it goes back to that trauma, right? Yeah. Why am I so reactive to this business partner, client, disregarding my idea? Was it that my parents disregarded me when I was a child, right? Do I take that person? Do I not take that person? That's where growth happens, because then there's so much energy that gets unlocked. You don't take things personally.
Yeah.
You realize it's business and everyone has their own psychological lens. And that creates this positive energy and positive environment where everyone prevails.
And that requires a person to at least have awareness, right? Because you need to be aware that you're having a certain reaction, because that's the point where, for example, so you're in traffic, you're driving, and this is the thing where most people get annoyed. It's like either a front driver just pushes on the brake, you're almost hitting it, and people have a reaction. Now you can have a reaction to that, and you'd be like, oh, that's crappy, blah, blah, blah. Some people stay in that reaction for days. And then you're like,
remember when that dude stopped?
Dude,
like, let it go, man.
Let it go. It's not worth your time, because every time when you do this, your body chemistry sends the signals of frustration. Like your body needs to feel what you're thinking. So you feel the frustration, and now the longer you do it, you become the embodiment of frustration. Now, if you do it for days and then months on end, some people stay stuck in it. And this isn't innocent, but you can also talk about, heavy things like divorce and stuff. Like there's not something that you can 90 seconds and I'm over a divorce. Of course not. But there is a moment in time where if you do it if you stay too long in that prolonged reaction, becomes part of your identity, and now you react from the victimization of that event that happened to you 5 years ago. And that becomes the lens through which you see life. And then you make different decisions based on victimization. That's the awareness that's key.
Exactly. And then you start acting from that primal state, which is just fight or flight. Survive.
Yeah.
Right? That primal state of survival.
Yeah, survival.
So,
yeah.
It costs a lot of energy to maintain that stance. And again, it's because of stress, right? Stress levels go up, your hormone chemistry gets destroyed. It's not purely spiritual. You can explain it to chemistry, but
it is very biochemical. Yeah.
Of psychology.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing about, like, you can explain that with science, what literally happens. But I personally had my own burnout experience that made me, you were sitting in this room with these people and saying, okay, we can talk about it, but everybody filters this differently. For me, it was that moment where I'm like, it was so empty. And I'm like, okay, I need to change. But I actually realized I didn't have a burnout. The burnout was in my personality. It was in how I thought, felt, and acted throughout the world. And, worries that you have about the future or things about the past. And you consistently, if you want to look at it visually, every time you do it, you're siphoning out energy into these things that either happen to you or potentially could happen to you. And 9 out of 10 times they won't. But it takes so much energy. And when you do that, there's never energy for you to create. If you're in survival, most people are living the whole life in survival. And that's just,
It is all the matter. And it sucks to hear that you went through that, but I guess you learned from it, right?
That's it. Life's a journey. And looking back, without an event like that, it didn't brought me on a certain path, right? So some people, you can look at it two ways. You can say, okay, it happened to me, I'm a victim of the situation. Or it's like, okay, it happened to me, I'm trying to make the best of it. And now it brought me here, so it's a good thing. And I think that is always the two choices that you have, regardless whether it's in business or personal. It's whether, okay, you always have the ability to make a new choice. However, are you making it from the lens of victimization? Oh, why did this happen to me? Or say, okay, it happened to me, but who do I choose to be right now? You can always choose who you're going to be in the present moment. And you have that, authority there. And that's where truly you can actually change as a person. And so the funny part is that we're talking about this part, but if you're, running a company and working with people that are data obsessed and are basically always on and typically in survival, as we just discussed, like, what actually keeps you present? Like, is there a certain practice or a habit that's for you a non-negotiable that you practice?
Yes, there's a morning ritual. That's my thing. I don't want to give that up. I did give it up this year to reach a new level of growth. And I did reach that level of growth. But then I realized that sacrificing that morning ritual and myself was not worth the money that came with that. So I had to let that go. And that freed up a lot of energy and just brought me back to contact with myself so that I can hear myself and be creative again. And morning ritual is essential to wake up whenever I want, not jump on the call immediately, right? Not with the ring bell, right, where it rings on your phone and you're just like, oh, what's going on? Like, alert, oh, we gotta wake up. Wake up when you feel like waking up. Hopefully in the morning, but sometimes you gotta sleep a little bit longer. Go for a walk, do a stretching session, maybe meditate for 10-15 minutes, right? Nothing too crazy. Just live in the moment for like 1.5, 2 hours in the morning before you start anything. That gives you so much positivity and vibes and just puts you in the right mindset. That's become part of my identity that I don't want to give up because I feel best in that, in that state. And it's also having more morning breakfast for 1 hour, just not rushing food and just enjoying time with my wife, right? Sitting down and chatting and enjoying the meal. It's such a beautiful thing, and I feel like a lot of Americans don't understand that because they're in a constant race somewhere.
Yeah.
And the Europeans get that better because Europeans can sit down, like especially French people, can sit down in the morning and just like eat breakfast works for 1.5 hours, drink coffee, and just socialize. And I think that's part of life that everyone is disregarding now, and everyone's worried about getting somewhere. They forget that the present is the gift. That's why it's called the present. That's your present. And just be in the moment and enjoy it before you do anything else. And of course, like it takes time to figure that out. I'm not saying like, look, sometimes you got to pay your bills. You got to live through that pain. I'm not disregarding that at all. I went through that too when you just figured the entrepreneurship part. But what I realized that the most growth came from actually living how you want instead of rushing somewhere. That's where most growth happens. And I want people to feel confident that they will figure it out. Right? It will take time, and as much time as you need, but you will figure it.
Yeah, I think you touched the base on something, right? What you just mentioned about the freedom part, like the fact that you're saying, this is my non-negotiable morning routine that is important to me because of X, Y, Z. Like if we're trying to translate this, like what's your version of profit outside of the business? Because what tells you life is actually working and not just looking like it's working from the outside? Like, what is that for you?
Just energy, like how I feel, right? Because I know that if I feel good, I will make money. Myself before my clients. If I don't feel good, I spend too much time focusing on the fact that I don't feel good because of this, because of that, because of this. And it takes my focus on the problem, not the solution. But if I feel good, I forget about the problems. Because the problems are just seeds for my desires. They're there to show me where to go, but I don't need to focus on them. I just need to focus on where I'm going. But if I don't feel good, I will always switch my focus back to the problem as a seed, not as a path that it's trying to enlighten.
Love that. Yeah, so that makes sense. I think that's a good point. With energy throughout your day. Also for me, if I look at the phases, I had a phase where I was, I now have, I'm a father. I have one kid, second on the way. I always now look at it like, what the hell did I do with my time before I had kids? Right? It's just something that you think but then when you're in it, you're like, wow, what happened to the time? So, and then energy, and this is something I learned earlier. I wanted to be like, I always. And I think for you as well, like working out, running, whatever you do, at least get that energy up. And because we're having a sitting job, right, sitting behind the desk, it's very not great for the body. So stretching, whatever you're doing is good for the body. And also to become, 5 to 10 years younger than your biologically are, I think is good because that creates that energy, creates so much freedom for present moment and also in the future. I think we all know the meme where it says like when you're young you have no money, tons of energy. Then you're in your midlife, you have more money, your energy's meh, and then at the end of your life you have most money but you have no energy. And I think that's kind of like there's always this skewed balance that we're trying to
I wanna share a different perspective on that meme.
Of course.
I think it's all about the mindset.
Yeah.
When you're young, you may not have enough money, but you have just enough to be young and to live that life. When you get older, you actually have time, but you're just in a constant race that you don't let yourself live in the moment. That's why the time is not there. And when you get older, it's just you have energy, but maybe you're still doing the shitty things that you don't want to do, that you haven't wanted to do for years. And now it's all built up into this. I've seen 80-year-olds who are running and stretching and living life to the fullest, and they have energy, man. It's like, I think it's all about the mindset.
I think, and it's not even, because we had a discussion about mindset, right? It's very rooted in like something fixed, or it's actually very dynamic. And I think a part of that goes back to that personal, that reality, that personality part. But if you have trained yourself to be in victimization for 40 years, don't expect to feel free when you're 80. You will still feel the same way if you've never challenged that. So I totally agree with you. Like, yeah, the meme was the average, but there's exceptions to the rule. But you are the creator of that life by that default. Right?
I'll share a funny personal story as well. I used to fear skydiving a lot. Like, it was one of those things that I would my blood would just crawl up, and like I would get paralyzed just imagining the idea of like falling down, right? And I decided to challenge myself back in 2018 when I lived in Canada, and I drove to Chicago. I didn't tell anyone. I drove to Chicago because they had skydiving there. And I just said, you're going there. You're doing the skydive. That's it. Guess who was jumping with me? It was an 80-year-old woman.
Oh, lovely.
You know how that made me feel? I was like, man, what the hell? Like,
if she's doing it,
if she's doing it, it should be a no-brainer. And that actually made me feel better. Because I was like, man, like, 80-year-old woman, she's not dying. She's done it a couple of times.
Maybe she was there for you, to give you that.
Maybe
she was needed there. Yeah,
exactly. So they don't run away. But I think this part of the story is you should look up to people who are doing great things as an inspiration, not as jealousy or like feeling resentment towards that. Because if you look at someone who's overcome their challenges, I don't know, whatever it is. Like, this Brazilian model who lost her leg and then she became like a model with a prosthetic leg, right?
Yeah.
If she can do it with a prosthetic leg, maybe you can too. Maybe it's just all in your head that you are not allowing yourself to do it, right?
It's a belief, It's
a belief, right? Understand where that belief comes from and resolve that. Because there's so many great things that great people are doing in this world, and you don't even know about them because maybe you're in the loop of bad news every single day. And all you hear about is bad news, but there's great people doing great things in the world, not caring about the bad news. Because, again, we know that the bad news will always be propagating an idea or a narrative. So just detaching from that to unlock a lot of energy and then finding inspiration in whatever you want to do. And just understanding that it's your beliefs that are limiting you from doing that. Even like starting entrepreneurship, like everyone struggles with that at the beginning. It's normal. Like,
it's the hardest part.
If you're working for an agency, but you've been wanting to like do your own thing, but you're fearful that you will struggle. You will struggle, but there is light at the end. Like everyone struggles, but we all figure it out. So, and worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, maybe it's not something that you wanted. You can go back to the system again, right, and work for an agency. You can always come back.
In that regard, like I saw this quote today that I wrote down, so just I quickly searched it up. It was failure plus persistence equals change. That's just it, right? It's just, or success, however you want to phrase it. But if you keep hitting that failure over and over, and ultimately you'll get there. Because one of the greatest references I found, a baby or a little kid, around the months of, between 8 to 10 months, they start to learn to walk. Nobody tells them you can't do it. They just keep on getting on their feet. They keep doing it. If they fall down, it doesn't matter if it's 1 time or 1,000, they keep doing it until they walk. And then before you know it, they pull all the plugs out of the walls and start to annoy you. But that's the baby reference is so key because they have this energy. They want to do it. Nobody tells them they can't. They tell themselves, I want to, and I'm gonna. And ultimately, they succeed. One of the beautiful circles of life. Yeah.
How can we be babies?
Dude, kids know much more than we do. I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're much more in tune with their intuition and their gut feeling. That's for sure.
They're picking up stuff that we have unlearned, I think, really.
Yeah. I read a theory about it. It's a theory. I haven't done much research about it.
Bring
but
it.
It has to do with your pineal gland. So the pineal gland is, this most interesting thing that every ancient civilization studied. Like the Egyptians, they have the third eye. That's the pineal gland.
Yeah.
The Buddhists have the dot, or the Indians, the Hindus have the dot. That's a representation of the pineal gland. The Buddhists have their own version as well, which is a representation of the pineal gland. And what pineal gland does, it actually puts you in tune with your feelings and with your intuition. That's what it does. And it's that bridge between death and life as well, right? It releases DMT when we die and when we're born as well. So it's that entry into the subconscious, into the
the spirit realm, the other dimension,
But what happens is as we age, it gets calcified, that pineal gland. So it gets more rigid. And the question is, does it get rigid because of our mindset and our stress levels, right? And then we can see magic in the world. It's like these moments of like, oh wow, like this meant something to me, or like I get this gut feeling. And then the adults just think about this and that's just imagination. Well, maybe it's reality.
I think I have an alternative side to that part as well. It's because I've been studying that part for the past 3 years as well, due to some other lanes. It's actual radio receiver, right? Just like you said. And decalcification is something that we say now. However, again, I'm very careful with what I want to believe or not. Because if they say it's cal, okay, what does that mean? Maybe we're simply not practicing something that we should be practicing. But it doesn't mean that because it's calcium we cannot use it anymore, because that's then a belief that I don't want to surrender to. Right? Everything is a belief. It's super dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's like you don't know what causes something.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
You just hear what other people tell you.
And some people are throwing out there. Yeah, some people are throwing out there that it has to do with the fluoride in your toothpaste, and before you know it,
before you know it's a whole thing,
It's the whole thing, yeah. So, no, man, I agree. There's so much more to this life than we can perceive. Also, have you ever seen the spectrum of light? We're perceiving this much, and if you look at the probability for us seeing reality as it is, you know how much percent that is?
Probably less than 5%.
Zero.
Oh, wow.
It is 0% that we perceive reality as it actually is due to the spectrum of light. It's crazy.
That's insane. So our eyes are the biggest liars.
Yeah, we might be able to perceive all types of stuff around, but we just can't see it. We're plugged into reality at a certain frequency, and that's all we can perceive with our senses. But again, the pineal gland then, and that opens up, we can perceive stuff that is out of those frequencies, right? It's just outside of it. That's the beauty.
Amazing.
Well, we made quite the arc today. Started, rooted there, ended here. Love it.
Ended with pineal gland.
Ended with a pineal gland. This is the receiver where we can put wishes into to our universe.
I wonder how many people dropped off by now and just sitting and like,
exactly.
These two bearded dudes talking about.
It's like, I came here for D2C stuff. What happened with all this blah? But this is the stuff that. I think when you we'll see how that is. But I'd love to see the feedback for everybody watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Valentin, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your nuggets and your wisdom on today's call. And I'll see you guys next time.